Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, Ryan. Doing amazing.
We were just, well, especially because you're in Florida and I'm in Minnesota. So you already got one up on me. So very looking forward to this conversation. You were just telling me about some of the crazy stuff you got going on with the current business and the growth that you guys have had. You got a book that's out, and you've got a very interesting background as well. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the connections between payment processing and marketing. And so,
There are actually no connections at all.
No connection. Well, why don't you just give everybody the high level overview of your background, and then we can jump in.
Yeah, so I graduated, I think I'm a bit older than you, Ryan, but I graduated university in 1992. And when I got out of school, there was actually, it was a recession at the time. And so I had a choice. I had a choice to either, go to work in Boston in mutual fund companies for something like they were offering $21,000 a year back then. It was ridiculous. Or I could have gone back to work for my father and he was paying me almost double that, in construction though. So that was we spoke about having a why, by the way. We spoke about that. My why is to never work in construction ever again. Because, I don't know, I used to look out the window and see that blazing hot sun come up over the horizon and know that I was going to have to be on the roof. Or if it were the winter time, like you're experiencing
cold
right now,
or warm, or
have you ever smashed your finger with a hammer when it's 1 degree? It's brutal.
Well, my father-in-law, Mark, he used to, he was in the union, and so he was construction, and he'd be sitting on a forklift and it'd be like 4 degrees out, and just true work. I'm going to put the quotes because that's when you showed up every single day.
Exactly. So, part when I talk about the book, one of your internal things that you need to master is your why, right? So I've got a pretty big why to never work construction. So anyway, so from construction, I was able to build, actually working for my father during the week, and then I was able to build a sports agency on the weekends. So I was traveling. I'd literally drive to Canada from Connecticut on the weekends. I'd all over Boston, all over New York, wherever the good hockey players were, I was in those arenas. So over the course of a couple of years, I was able to build a pretty good practice. I had 7 guys in the National Hockey League. I had over 35 players in the minor leagues and the European leagues as well. So,
wow, super cool.
Yeah. And then from there, I lost 2 clients. I was fired by 2 of my clients. So we're going to talk about recurring revenue, I think, in this episode. Mm-hmm. And I quickly saw that the sports business doesn't offer recurring revenue because you can lose about 30% of your revenue overnight when just two clients fire you. And that's how I fell into the payment space. And I met a guy who was doing about $20,000 a month in profit to the bottom line. And this is back in 1998. And I was like, wow.
How did that conversation happen? So you're doing the sports stuff, and then you said you fall into the payment place. Were you at a bar? Were you at a sports game? Or like, how did you fall?
Well, a buddy of mine introduced to me. I asked him. This buddy pulls up in a Porsche, and I'm like, "Hey, how does this guy make that? What's up? Where does he make his money from?"
Why does he have a Porsche?
That's right, exactly. Why does he have a Porsche and I have a Honda? Right. So he explained to me the business. What piqued my interest was the fact that he had about 2,000 clients, right? And if he lost 1, 2, or 3, even 10, it wouldn't hurt his bottom line. I had just lost 2 of my 7 top NHL guys. And, I lost them the same way I got them. I basically, I would basically steal my clients from other agents. Same thing happened back. So it's not a very good strategy. But anyway, the point is, I saw this guy making recurring revenue, $20,000 a month recurring revenue. And I said, look, that to me has value because the portfolio itself has value. And I quickly learned that these portfolios had 36x value on them, which is huge. As you know, you're a guy who understands that. So I quickly learned the payment space and got into that, and all the way up through 2016. So from 1998 to 2016, I was in the payments business, and that was a pretty good. I've had some very successful exits, and anyway, so go ahead.
So and you have also a couple. You were part of other companies in the payment space, as from what I believe, and then. Why don't you give everybody a little bit of an overview of what you're doing now too, and then the book, because I think the wrapper around this, Mark, just to set the stage for everybody, we were talking about, growing value, being intentional, having a couple exits. I mean, you're focused on the right things in your current businesses, and now you look at businesses a little bit differently. So maybe give a little bit of an overview of the book and then what you're doing now. We can kind of go back, and then it has some context, some of the previous journeys that you've had.
Sure. So the book is called The Lucky Formula: How to Stack the Odds in Your Favor and basically create success, right? So it's a culmination of my successes and my mega failures. So the book starts off with my mega colossal failure back in 2007 when it actually starts in 2006 when I had a huge successful win. I sold a company that I started in 2000. And I sold in 2006 for millions, and that stacked on top of the money that I already had in the bank. I literally, and here's a learning for you to do, Ryan, and your clients or your listeners: never go all in, like literally all in. So
all the personal guarantees, roll it all in,
and everything, millions of dollars, push it on red. Don't ever do that. Anyway, so back in 2007, I went all in on a real estate deal. And you remember the year 2007.
I just immediate gut punch.
Exactly.
Oh.
So you remember those years. I went all in, and within about a year, almost a year and a half, I'm staring at that bankruptcy gun to my head, the barrel of that gun, and bills were stacking up, and I was basically on the verge of bankruptcy and anxiety, depression, all that not fun stuff. And from there, as I think, Ryan, you had a low point in your life as well, we spoke about. And, from there, you get the energy, or you get the inspiration to get out. If you're a winner, and if you're somebody that, that doesn't like being a loser for too long.
Don't trap me.
Exactly.
Don't
tread on me, maybe. But anyways,
trap, tread, shit, whatever.
So it was about 6 months into my, let's call it, depression. I was like, I had enough of this. So I picked up the phone, and I'm like, listen, I need to get back into the business that I understand. I made millions in the payments business. I know it. I'll call myself the king of Canada. I understood the marketplace. So I called a buddy of mine. I said, Todd, a buddy of mine in the payment space. I'm like, look, here's the situation. I'm bankrupt. I'm in a bad situation. Can you help me? First, he was floored. He was like, well, how did you get there? And I told him, well, I was an idiot and I made bad moves. But anyway, I'm here now, so let's get out of it. So as luck would have it, he had a buddy who just did a deal with a Canadian bank to run their portfolio, their credit card processing or their payments portfolio. And he said, look, he's looking for somebody in Canada to run it, to, number one, take an equity stake and then run the business. And so my book details that. It details how I was able to get myself out of depression, out of basically hell, and back into the profit zone, back into cash flow in the bank, and great things happening again. So that was from 2009 and roll all the way through 2016. I was able to create a massively profitable business and sell it as well. So that was another.
And you guys had, what, a couple hundred employees too, I saw when you'd sold that business?
That's right. We had about 215 employees. We had a pretty cool business model, right? So we had a business model where we had sales reps across Canada in every single marketplace, and we'd book them appointments. So we had a I call it the ultimate sales machine. So we had a call center booking them appointments, and then we'd have a manager on the other end of the phone managing that appointment with them, along with them. So it was a pretty awesome recruiting strategy, lead generation strategy, as well as sales strategy. It's pretty cool. But I think value. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go for it.
I think one of the valuable pieces of information, I think, for your clientele is back in, if you're stuck, right? So I launched the company in 2009. A year and a half later, at the end of 2010, I was pretty fried. I was actually at the end of my rope with that business, because while we grew it quickly, we literally grew it to 200 employees within a year. But but the problem is that I call it the entrepreneur's dilemma. And I think, Ryan, we spoke a little bit about this before, is that as an entrepreneur, you usually have limitations, and limitations are self-imposed because you believe that you need to be the best at everything in your company. Or at least let me rephrase that. Companies that are stuck have a CEO or a leader that believes they need to be the best in every aspect of the business. So imagine I have 200 employees and I need to know everything about sales, everything what's going on in marketing, customer service, legal, HR, every aspect. So, I think you've been there before, Ryan. So my email box was filled with about 1,000 emails unread. And it's December 2010, and I basically want to jump out the window of my
right.
So, but I kind of had my rebirth. So December 13th is my birthday, and for some reason, I always have a rebirth around that time. So
what was the rebirth like? What was some of the like? Because I think so many people, regardless of whether it's 20 people that people cap out or if it's 2,000, I think there's a big spectrum of what the pain that an entrepreneur is able to tolerate in their own entrepreneur's dilemma.
That's right.
What did you like, other than jumping out the window, what were some of the things that you looked to break you through and get some clarity to the next stage? And then what did that do for you?
Well, a lot of times leaders of companies have a massive ego and they don't believe, they think they know everything, right? So the first thing you have to do is drop your ego. So that's exactly what I did. I started looking for a coach and a mentor. Right. So I started looking for a business coach, business mentor, and Tony Robbins kept on coming up on my Google searches. And lo and behold, about 3 weeks later in Vegas, there was what's called Business Mastery. So that was in early January of 2011. And at the time I was just recovering from, my near, let's say, bankruptcy death experience. So I didn't have a ton of money, but the event was $10,000 to be sitting in the front. And to sit in the VIP section. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to meet the most people possible, and I'm going to be best, situated in the best place if I'm sitting in the front. So I shelled out the 10 grand, and I was able to. The first thing you learn when you walk in here, if you haven't gone to one of these events, I would highly recommend it. You learn that you're the problem. You get hit in the face with a shovel, pretty much. You learn that the first thing Tony says, if your business is stuck, you're the problem. I'm like,
let's get rid of that ego as fast as possible.
Exactly. He knocks you off your perch pretty quick.
That's awesome.
So I learned within that, that 4 days or that 5 days, that the fact that, I didn't have to know everything. I could hire people that were smarter than me and not lose my sort of CEO position. And I could actually grow a business quickly and be happy growing a business because I could focus on doing what I want to do. Right. So a lot of times, again, like I said, CEOs think they need to be the best in everything, but that's a fallacy. I mean, if you fast forward to today, I've got almost 300 employees now in a digital marketing company. I don't know how to media buy. I don't know how to create. I don't know how to do a lot of the things, but I have the best creators in the planet because I was able to drop my ego and hire people half my age to do the job that they could do much better than me. So I guess that's a big learning in the book and a big learning out of, my life experiences, to drop your ego and bring people in that are better than you to do the job.
So you mentioned that you've done that in the company that you're running right now, and then also the one that you had that the payments in 2011.
That's
your
correct.
first company. Did you ever realize that you were in this entrepreneur's dilemma and that you had this situation, or how did this situation manifest itself in the first business if it did?
Well, in the first business, I was part of a team, right? So I wasn't the CEO of the company. I was the EVP of sales. So, my sort of world revolved around sales. So wasn't able to hit that wall of trying to be the superstar in every department because my focus was on sales. But as you take a company and as you have aspirations to grow bigger, you're going to hit that wall if you don't drop that ego, right? So it's a big learning.
What's your thoughts on or comments or experiences on hiring and finding like the executive rock stars? I've had different podcasts that I've done about it, and some pretty good ones over the last year that some good gold nuggets. And I think the ego you mentioned, I think, is one of the biggest barriers. But like, recognize anything that's worked or not worked as far as like getting that next bench of people that really can take that stress off of you.
Well, we just hired a president of our U.S. division. And so I'm going to tell you, I think we made an amazing hire, but obviously it's pretty fresh. It's pretty new. So I'll have to report back to you in 6 months.
That sounds good.
But I think we made the good move because, we were able to bring in this gentleman, and then he was able to bring in his sort of circle of influence. And so we've already seen, huge dividends paid on that front.
Yep. So, I mean, anything about the characteristics, like here's maybe a little more context to some of the question here is that a lot of times I've seen, and I went through this experience myself, is people like they might shortchange the salary, or like they're truly, when you're getting that next level of management, depending on what kind of business model you're in, your cost of growth is high, and you may need to make sure that you can fund your own growth or have your source. And then there's this person or these people that you need to hire to get yourself out from underneath all that take another level of investment. So people get kind of, freaked out maybe about the payroll that they're going to have to bring on if it's their whole bench. But I think the bigger part, Mark, is that if they don't hire the right people, they're not truly getting rid of that stress because it's still falling under their responsibility. And so they have the payroll, and let's say you skimped it by 80%, you got the B players, and all the shit's still sitting on your shoulders. So that stress is not there. Have you, does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. Well, let's put it this way. If you make a mistake, you have to correct it. I mean, don't just live with your... Look, you want to surround yourself, you said B players, right? You want to surround yourself with A players, because if you have A players, and Dan Sullivan, I don't know if you know Strategic Coach, but I'm part of that group as well. So Dan was also instrumental in teaching me, a lot of awesome tactics on how to run a self-managing business. And actually, this is funny. If I even might have it open to that page. Hang on. So we had an event 2 months ago, and he's like, you want to ask yourself these 3 questions when you're, just bear with me 1 second. These are pretty awesome questions. Breakthrough questions right here. So when you're launching a brand new division or project, question number 1, this is from Dan, right out of my notebook. How can I achieve this project by doing nothing? That's the first question you want to ask yourself.
Super interesting.
Right? Think about this.
Yeah.
How can I achieve this project by doing nothing? That's question number 1. Breakthrough question number 2 is, what's the least that I can do to get this started? So number 2, what's the least that I can do to get this started? And number 3, who's the who to do this so that I can do the least or do nothing? So basically the point is, find the who to do it. That's a rock star and an A player that allows you to step back and kind of oversee it and doing not a lot. So that's how you grow a business. That's how you grow a massive business.
That's awesome. So what changed for you after the mastery and you went back? And so how did your new mindset and how you're looking at your job and your role versus your ownership and like the future, how did that change? And then how did you start putting things into action?
Well, it changed everything. I mean, learning from Tony Robbins and all the cast of the crew that he brought in to teach you each aspect of your business. And then from there, I went over to Dan Sullivan and I joined Strategic Coach. So basically what I had to do was totally rearrange my call it C-suite or my vice presidents. I moved out my vice president of sales. I moved out my VP of operations, moved out my head of HR, and just switched it out. And then all of a sudden I brought in, instead of having, yes men around me, I brought in people that would challenge me and people that would basically take a division on and run it themselves. And it allowed me to focus on what I want to focus on, which is business development, which is, strategic acquisitions and things like that. So if you're in the zone where you are allowed to focus on what you want to focus on, your company will grow. The things will happen on the positive side. That's basically it.
Was it obvious to you that like the building the business on the sales and marketing front and strategic acquisitions is what you wanted to do? Or how did you figure out like where you wanted to play once you freed up other parts of your time?
I always knew what gets me jazzed up. So, I go back to when I was 15 and I was jumping on the ice with my father coaching kids. I love to watch a kid, when I teach somebody to put the puck in the top corner, it gets me excited. So then fast forward to being on the sales floor. When I have a sales guy, I pick up the phone, I help them close a deal. That gets me excited. So doing things and helping people grow and developing business is what always gets me juiced and jacked up. So that's what I want to do.
So after that, going back to your book, talking about some of the mega failures and like, what is the lucky formula for you? And I don't know how that, what is it that you did leading up to the exit of that business that you would look back and you would say that was the lucky formula? And I'm curious on how you wove that book and what you did into that growth and exit.
Okay. So the lucky formula is how to stack the odds in your favor and cash in on success. And it's also that luck is not a fluke, it's a formula, right? So there's a series of 20 things that you can do to stack the odds in your favor. So I'll give you an example. So I'm pretty heavy into biohacking, right? So I believe that, I understand nutrition and fitness and things like that, and how that positively impact your day. So for example, all right, let's talk about morning routine. So if you're waking up in the morning and you've got your routine. So for example, my routine is smiling in the mirror, looking goofy like this, smiling in the mirror, getting the endorphins flowing, right? And then it's affirmations, talking to yourself in a positive way. So I am a fearless leader. I am an amazing leader. I am an amazing person. I am happy. I am excited. I'm fired up. So I have 9 different things I say to myself. And then, when I jump in the shower, I'm visualizing what I want, my biggest, wins or my biggest goals, biggest desires. I'm brushing my teeth, I'm cleaning my tongue, I'm smiling in the mirror, like we said, and I'm constantly monitoring the language that I use with myself. So the lucky formula is stacking these kind of positive things on top of each other so that, when I get on a call with Ryan, that, my energy levels through the roof, and the fact that I'm delivering tons of value, because if I deliver tons of positive value out there, there's a pretty good chance that something is going to come back to me. Right. And if I'm telling Ryan how amazing that his questions are and how amazing of a person he is and how awesome of a person he is, there's a good chance that Ryan's going to refer me or something positive will happen out of it. That's what I mean by stacking the odds in their favor. Like, to give you an awesome example is I was at Dave Asprey's event in Orlando a couple months ago. And so I'm sitting in the VIP section. So first I'm into biohacking. So I'm into nutrition and fitness and supplementation and all that. So I go to this event, I sit in the VIP section. So there's chances are at this event, there are people who think like I do, right? Pretty good chance. So this is what I mean by stacking the odds in your favor. So I've done all these positive things for my body, and now I'm doing positive things for my brain. I'm going to an event. So I'm sitting in the VIP lunch, and a woman sits next to me. Her name was Kim. So I just started talking to her. Turns out she's the president of the Buffalo Sabres. I'm like, that's cool. A woman president of an NHL hockey team. That's a pretty rare thing. So that was a great conversation piece. I knew some of the players on her team. So we were talking about them. And then it turns out I look at her name tag, Kim Pagula. If you know the name, I'm like, oh, you're not only the president of the team, you own the Buffalo Sabres and the Buffalo Bills, right? So
yeah. So there you go. And then we start worth knowing. And you engineered the whole interaction. The fact that you're in.
That's the point. That's the point about stacking the odds. So I asked her about her marketing problems with the Buffalo Bills, and it turns out that one of the problems is her clientele is 50-year-old males. So I'm like, well, what are you doing for Gen Z? And she says, well, we don't really have a strategy yet. We're working on one. So I immediately call my head of creators, and I said, Julia, make me 10 videos with your Gen Z creative team on how you would market the Buffalo Bills to Gen Z. So within a couple hours, they whipped up some amazing videos. I hunted her down. I showed her the videos. They were funny. They were hilarious. It's basically TikTok videos on how to, how my team thought to market the Buffalo Bills, and she loved them. So potentially we're going to get the Buffalo Bills as a client. So is that luck, or did I stack the odds in my favor to be sitting in that situation? That's the point.
I love it, because I don't think I've ever had the words to articulate what you just described to others when they're saying, hey, why is this happening? Or how did you get that opportunity? It's like, well, I didn't know this specific situation was going to unfold, but I engineered all of the circumstances to allow one of these 10 situations to happen. So it's like someone said, well, that's on accident. I'm like, no, it was on purpose, but I didn't know it was this thing. So it's like this weird combination of on purpose, but yet leaving that. It's almost like if you're looking at a bullseye, you're saying, I know it's 2 inches wide and I'm going to hit it somewhere in there. I don't know exactly what spot.
Exactly.
But you're still the bullseye.
Exactly. No, but you're making a good point. So think about this. I stacked the smile on top of talking to myself positively, on top of eating properly, on top of taking my supplementation, on top of sleeping well, on top of feeling great, on top of being at that event, on top of meeting this you know what I mean? So think about it.
Yeah.
That's what the book is all about. So it teaches you tips and tricks on how to stack the odds in your favor. Basically it.
You know what? It syncs up so well, Mark, with our definition of intentional growth, because it's literally growing value And it's growing value at the end in mind. And here's what's so interesting. Over the last 7 years that I was at this, the first 5 was like freelancing, consultant, doing some random stuff, and then it became more intentional. But my point is, like, I always had this miserable marketing issue with growth and exit. It's because, like, everybody's like, well, I don't want to exit. I'm like, but if you don't think about it to the day you're burnt out, then you're totally screwed. And so trying to get this like concept, what you just described, the only other way we could say is intentional growth, where like it's what I've said before is, and I want to relate this back to your business experiences, is that if you grow value and you know what you want, why you want it, your why, like we talked about, we've got that in principle 1, is like if you're very intentional to grow value, you're not picking an outcome today. You're not saying, I'm going to do an ESOP in 2024. I'm selling to a private equity firm at this amount in 2025. You're saying, I'm going to engineer this entire situation and the value that I want to have as many freaking choices as possible. So that way, when I wake up in 2025, I've got the choices that I want. But you have to engineer that from like 5 years ago, and value creation is going to be the number one, mechanisms to help you create those choices. But it's been so damn hard to articulate that to people that haven't been through an exit or understand value creation. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense.
I wish it was that easy to say.
You better take that clip out and write it up. I think you just nailed it.
give it to your marketing team and like let it go viral on TikTok. But it's what's been challenging that I've seen from the hundreds of people that have been on this show is it's like the sheer amount of regrets, Mark. I mean, people have made so much freaking money that have been on the show, and they're sitting there going, hey, my Charles Schwab account, like it's got a lot of zeros and commas, but I'm no purpose, don't know what I want, miserable, depressed, because they didn't think about all these things. They just took whatever's right in front of them. So like going back to your situation as you're growing to 200 employees and then you eventually sold, relate the comments that we just had to your exit. Like how did you know that this was like maybe within the bullseye, that it was a right thing? Did it like
you mean to sell? Is that the question? To sell the company?
Yeah, to the last business, like to know that like, hey, this is why I was here. Like, did it feel right? Did it make sense to you at the time?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because I knew in 2013 was the right time to sell, but little did I know my business partners had other ideas. So here's a pretty good learning. When you're only a minority shareholder in a company, you really don't have a lot to say. So, so I guess, if everybody here can learn, get that 51%, because when you have that, or at least 50% with another partner that has the same ideas that you have, if you have any less than 50%, then, or 50.001%, you don't have that ability to exit when you think it's the right time. So back in 2013, I saw that the Canadian payments business, in my view, was at the height. So we could get the total top dollar for the business. Anyway, my business partners in New York had other ideas I didn't know, but they wanted to take the global company public, as we're a division of, we're the Canadian division of a global company. So I didn't know that they wanted to take the whole global package and put that public. But anyway, so
then what happened? Like, how did you jump from that to marketing? I mean, it sounds like you've always been the sales and marketing guy, but like, let's walk through that bridge, because I'd love to hear it.
Well, I finally was able to engineer the sale of the company, or at least my shares, my 30% stake in the company, in 2016. And as with any entrepreneur, right, and you know this, Ryan, you deal with entrepreneurs all day long, is they get itchy after a little bit of time sitting on the bench. So I met this gentleman by the name of Max, and he had just a one-man shop, and I was running with my wife a nutrition and fitness business, and so I was actually doing the marketing. I was actually doing the media buying on Facebook, but I hated every second of it. So I wanted to find somebody that can beat my numbers, right, and beat my cost per lead or cost per acquisition. And so after about 10 different people, finally I got somebody to beat me, and he totally crushed my numbers, but he was a one-man shop. And after about 6 months, I'm like, listen, dude, I think you have something here. You have a skill that we could blow up. We could make pretty big. So we launched in a year later, after meeting him, we launched a company called Maxi Media, and here we are today. So we've grown it from 2 people to over, now we're closing in on 300 employees within the last 4.5 years. So it's been a pretty good ride. Very good ride.
I mean, I can only imagine the reactions people that are listening in are thinking about that. So, what I mean, there's probably a lot of factors in it, but like, what are some of the maybe the foundational factors to that growth? Like, where you kind of tap the formula. What were you stacking in your favor to make sure that you were getting the outcomes that you wanted?
First and foremost, it's getting people. It's hiring people that could do the jobs you don't want to do. So, right, I don't know how to, or I did know how to media buy, but not today. I don't know how to use these platforms today. Like, so for example, Facebook back in 2016 is far different than it is today, right?
Yeah. Right.
So hiring media buyers, hiring the best media buyers and stepping out of the way, hiring the best tech team and stepping out of the way, hiring the best creators and stepping out of the way. So 2 years ago, we fell into TikTok, right? So TikTok, it's a far different beast than buying on Facebook or buying on Instagram or buying on Snapchat. So we had to create this whole creative team. So our creative team, literally the person who runs our creative team is 23 years old, and she's got over 100 creators that, and managers that report into her.
That's awesome.
She's 23. So think about that. So it's allowing your ego to step aside and let a 23-year-old run your department. So think about that.
Well, I know. I bet you the people that are listening also go, I want that kind of growth. And oh my God, that scares the shit out of me, what you just said.
Exactly.
And when you're scaling your firm like this, professional services is challenging to scale. Working on it right now with our business. I work with a lot of professional services firms. So, what was the strategy in the business model and how you scaled that? And I don't know if this is where the wrapper of recurring revenue ties in.
It does. We started as a service company. So we started as an agency, right? But then I don't really love the services business itself because it's tough to scale. So we fell into a couple lucky opportunities where we met the right people and we got into the performance business. So performance is all about producing. And if you produce, you get paid. If you don't produce, you don't get paid is bottom line, or you lose money at least. So, putting in $1 to pull out $1.30 in the back end, that's kind of performance marketing. And so through trade shows and through conversations and through speaking to people, we're able to, roll the company, get the right relationships and the right people and the right verticals and the right, opportunities to grow the business from a service business to a performance marketing business.
How did that impact cash flow, your ability to fund your growth? And like the engagements we have with your clients?
Well, in the beginning, because we didn't have the right lines of credit set up and we didn't have the right relationships with the platform set up properly, we had basically funded out of our pockets. So, that was tough. So we had to take every dollar that we put back into the company and roll it back in until we hit a certain level. But then when we hit a certain level, the banks were throwing money at us left, right, and center.
So did you do the performance before the performance measurement? Because I think one of the biggest challenges with a services company was recurring revenue that's predictable. And then the moment that and I've worked on, not our old business and this business and plenty other ones where if you get a retainer based, for exchange of services, someone's always pissed. You didn't get the value this month or the company didn't get it. Someone's always getting pissed. And then they're renegotiating next month's contract, or you go to the hourly basis and it's either too much, too high of a spread, someone's being greedy. And then there's all these complications. Let's say with ours, it's an hourly rate, but then all of a sudden you got to bring on a big payroll. And then you've got essentially a 4-month risk of, cash flow drain before you fully stack them up and put them onto clients. Unless you do something like you were talking about of having a different metric of how the cash comes in. So how did you explain a little bit more of that performance based?
Well, performance it's basically if this, then that. If you're going to pay me $2 per lead, then I better get that lead for $1.50 or $1.75, right? So that's why I like the performance model. It's based on our efforts. So if you're going to pay me X, then I better produce it for Y. I mean, that's it. So if you're going to pay me $2 a lead and I can only produce it for $2.10, I lose. And I better go back to the drawing board and say, hey, listen, I need $2.50. So it's all the performance game. I've always been in sales. So if you don't produce, you don't eat, pretty much is kind of the mindset I've been used to forever. So yeah, it doesn't scare me to go out there and hunt for my next meal. So
that's awesome. And recurring revenue, how have you integrated that into your business? And then and as you go down this thought is, we had recurring revenue in my old business, and there are certain industries and certain businesses where it's just apparently obvious. Payment processing, there's payment flows. You're skimming off the top to provide your services. Absolutely. It's like just duh. Real estate agents are going, I don't know how to do this unless I create a property management firm. So exactly. I think people get stuck on recurring revenue, SaaS, and then it just stops there. So what are your thoughts on recurring revenue? What are there different types? Or how do you view it?
Well, first, if you look at our business, our recurring revenue comes because of the fact that we have multiple industries and multiple verticals within the industry, and we have multiple clients, right? So I would call that recurring. It's almost like a mutual fund model. I don't like mutual funds, by the way, but anyway, it's kind of like a mutual fund model. I like the model. I don't like mutual funds themselves because they're a ripoff. But anyway,
how about this? A balanced ETF portfolio. There
you go. All right. So if you diversify your business, across many different verticals and many different channels and many different clients, then you essentially have created a recurring revenue business. Like you said, in payments, it's easy to define. I've got 10,000 clients paying me about $150 per month per client. That's obvious. But if you have other types of business, it's not as obvious. But I think there's a way to look into your business and create recurring revenue. So for example, you could maybe, Ryan, if you help companies do XYZ, you could get a percentage of their ongoing revenue. For you, maybe that's a way for you to think about it. Mm-hmm. There's always a way for you to get a piece of the game that you're playing.
Well, and if you're tying that to the performance-based value pricing that you're doing, it's all about being part of the value chain, right? Right. It's like, exactly. What are the clients doing, and then how are you helping them succeed, and then you get paid based on what they're doing. With your growth, Mark, what have you been doing that is different with Maxi Media than the last couple of journeys that you had because of the stacking or the lucky formula and stacking the things in your favor? Are there things that you're doing intentionally now that you're like, holy crap, I wouldn't have done that in the last company because of whatever reason?
Yeah, it's a term called Blitzscaling. So we literally have taken the company and consciously decided at certain points to blitzscale, to literally, and what does that mean? Blitzscaling means hiring, mega hiring, and seeing where the chips fall. It's basically, it's kind of reckless in a sense, but it's controlled recklessness. So for example, when we went from 0 to X amount, is we had 4 employees, and we went from 4 to 30 within a month, and then we went from 30 to 100 within the next 2 months. So it's making a conscious effort to roll everything back into the company and to bring in the best people possible per division, and not being afraid to let go of people that aren't the best people.
That is awesome, because I had Chris Ye on my show a few months ago about his book Blitzscaling with Reid Hoffman, and it's so tied to startup and raising money, and so we were tying it back into the fact that any company can do it, and you have a real live example of how a services company did it. So
that's funny. He actually reached out to me on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. It's funny. He's like, because I have Blitzscaler in my title, and he's like,
well, and actually, when I got the intro about, from your team, I actually thought it was someone on his team again, because the name is so tied to what he's doing. But it's a real live example how a small privately held company can do this and blitzscale to highly profitable value, right? Not just because with blitzscaling in his world, it's grow as fast as possible and do a SPAC or an IPO, right? And that's how you liquidate your investment. But for someone that wants to create recurring EBITDA that's healthy and that gives them choices, it's slightly different. But I think the concept applies. How were you determining how much money you were what was at stake?
Here's one of the key points, right? The key points is that we looked at the revenue coming in, and let's just say at the time, I think our monthly revenue is a monthly profit. Let's call it $50,000 a month in free cash flow. You can either dividend that out or put it back into the company. What would a $50,000 dividend divided by 2 or 3 people do for you? Not much. But if you rolled that 50
with taxes too and all that stuff. Yeah.
So if you rolled that 50 grand back into the company and you kept on hiring every single month, you take your free cash flow and you hire and you hire and you hire. At one point, there's an inflection point where it takes off, and that's exactly what happened. Like you have to not be afraid to take your excess cash flow and roll it back in and make calculated decisions, right? Make calculated investments and investments in people. And if you're not afraid to hire the best people and to hire the smartest, and you asked me this question earlier. So you don't always have to start. We didn't start hiring these top C-level execs. We started hiring undervalued assets, smart individuals, young people. So a lot of times people say, oh, Gen Z, they're lazy. No, they're not. You just haven't found the right one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Think about that. They're not lazy at all. Oh, the millennials and the Gen Zs are lazy. No, that's a story. That's a BS story that you're telling yourself. Like we have, if you look at our staff, I want to say 80% of them are 25 and younger, right? That's unbelievable out of 300. So, and I found that Gen Z or even millennials, they're harder working than my generation even. Just you have to find the right ones.
It's a BS narrative, isn't it? Like, dude,
narrative.
I'm a millennial and I'm sitting here like the same narrative about millennials applies for Gen Z, applies for Gen X, and applies for baby boomers. It just depends on what data set are you looking at.
No, you're 100% right.
So like what's so awesome about the cash that you're investing and how to think about that. How did you think about your strategies? And here's some context behind that too, is because a lot of people that are privately held that I see is like, they're running EOS or scaling up or OKRs or whatever, but it's an operating system. They get confused with the strategic plan. Like going from 5 to 10 million is a goal, not a strategic plan. What customers, what products, how are we going to go to market? I think is something that a lot of people don't go through a formal exercise of decision making. So when you were saying, hey, we're going to hire 30 people, what was the intent? What was the strategy and how are you going to measure yourself against it?
Well, obviously I'm a whiteboard guy, right? So I love everything. It's kind of my challenge. So I moved from Montreal to Florida. I don't have an office yet, Ryan. I'm kind of going crazy. I need my whiteboard in front of you. But anyway, so I like whiteboarding the whole thing out. And whiteboarding, we're going to hire strategically in media buying. We're going to hire in creatives. We're going to hire in tech. We're going to hire. So the whole thing is planned out. And each dollar invested is going to generate X dollars in revenue, and then we're going to roll back and roll back. So I kind of had the plan laid out across. I had 24 feet of whiteboard, so I had the plan rolled out month 1, month 2, month 3, all the way up to month 24. So you've got to be strategic and you've got to plan things out over time, but don't be afraid to hire the best people. And again, don't be afraid to hire young that are undervalued assets. But at some point, you're going to have to pay them, just so you know. Like we're going through that right now. So we were able to hire undervalued assets at some point, but they're going to become valued assets at some point.
Yeah. Whether it's on your payroll or someone else's, right?
Exactly.
You might as well keep them.
Exactly.
So I know we're going to be getting short on time here. Is when you're looking at stacking the odds into your favor, and you've got this new business now that you're working on that you're blitzscaling, what are you what is your bullseye in a multidimensional way, Mark? So it's not just a number. I'm looking for when you say because you talked about your why, maybe describe. I'm curious, why are you doing all this? What gets you super excited to go through the growth challenges and the journey that you're doing every day?
Well, I like winning. It's just about winning for me. I mean, it's fun to win, right? So, I mean, I've got a massive goal at the end of the line, and I don't know if you're a hockey fan. You live in Minnesota, maybe you are, but
the Minnesota Wild was our customer for 7 years, man. So I went to almost every Wild game, and we actually had I don't remember, Buzz is his name. He was in the Miracle.
Buzz Schneider.
Yeah, he worked for us.
Really?
For 4 years. Yeah. Selling his own water units and hanging out at So I never played and I know very little about it, but participated and drank beers at many games.
So I grew up in a hockey family my whole life. My brother played in the NHL for 13 years. My other brother played pro. I didn't. But anyway, so my goal is to win the Stanley Cup as a business owner, as the owner of the Florida Panthers, and hold that Stanley Cup over my head. So that's the big massive, target.
Why the hell not, right? I mean, that's awesome.
Exactly. Why not? It's a crazy world out there, so why not get crazy?
So, this has been a lot of fun. I know we're wrapping up here. what do you want with your business? Like what, when you look at like the choices that you want and for your people, like how do you weigh all the choices that you have? I mean, when you're growing that fast, I'm assuming people are knocking on your door, and I'm just like, when you're thinking about like what to do with this baby that you've created, like what kind of choices are you looking for, and what are your hopes for it?
Well, we've actually had a pretty sizable offer recently on the company itself. So that wasn't that one came out of the blue kind of. So the goal was to build the company to hit that $1 billion mark. We may exit before that because the offer is pretty that good, or that tasty, I'll call it. So, that kind of came out of the blue. But when you do great things and you build valuable, solid companies, those things happen, right? You get lucky like that. So that's kind of where we are.
I'm lucky on purpose, right? It's the whole point.
There you go.
The whole point of the show. I love it. Two final questions. The word intentional, name of the show. I love people hearing their definitions. What does the word mean to you?
Intentional. Do things that mean something. Do things that are awesome and have a lot of fun. That's what I think it means.
And if people want to know more about you, the book, your company, where do they find you?
So I'm going to give a gift to your listeners. So the gift is first the lucky quiz. It rates yourself on a scale of 0 to 100 how lucky you are. So you could do that quiz at theluckyformula.com/quiz. Again, theluckyformula.com/quiz. It gives you your lucky score, and it also it teaches you or gives you tips and tricks on how to get luckier. And you could also find me on Instagram at Mr. Lucky Official. Again, that's Mr. Lucky Official on Instagram. You like that?
I do. I love it. I love it. Fully embrace it, man. Just own it.
And by the way, I didn't tell you this. My last name, Lachance or Lachance, actually means luck. So that's why I can call myself Mr. Lucky, because my name means it. So.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, enough said, right? Mark, this has been an absolute blast. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome, Ryan. Thanks, man.